we doing today?
I'm good. How about you?
I am fabulous, absolutely fabulous. And we were just waxing on about how much Goosebumps as a series meant to us, and obviously R.L. Stine is a huge, piece of that. But you were actually, in many ways, the first person that we encountered in terms of the creativity of this series with your covers. We want to start off into it right away.
All right.
Art-wise, how did you know that that was you? That being an artist was who you are?
Oh, that's a good question. I liked to draw as a kid.
Of course.
My dad was a World War II veteran. When he got out of the service, he just went right to work for a company. And his idea was you work for somebody for your whole life.
Of course.
And then you get a retirement package and, all that good stuff.
Right.
And so when I came along and said, I think I want to do art for a living.
Say what?
That did not fly. It did not fly. So when I was a senior in high school, I had taken care of all my academics. I had already been accepted at a New Jersey college, and I was going to go for business. And I had an opening in my schedule. So down the street was the vocational school,
Right.
and they were teaching commercial art. And I said, God, what commercial art?
What is that?
What is that?
Right.
And I went there, and in 2 seconds, I was 100% in. And I had to come home and tell my dad, I don't want to go to college, I want to go to art school. Did not go over well. Did not go over well.
It's the terminology. You said art school. She said vocational school.
That's
vocational school.
Where were you?
I'm sorry.
So, my instructor at the commercial art school, his name was Frank Neubauer. Frank Neubauer was also a veteran.
Yes.
And I came back to school and told Frank, I was like, can't go to art school. My father's not having any of this. He goes, what's, give me your phone number.
Wow.
So Frank Neubauer called my dad, told him to meet him at a local pub. They sat down, they both drank a beer. Frank told him that I had potential, and when my dad came home, he said, okay, it's good enough for Frank. It's good enough for me.
Hey, come on. One time for Frank, please.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness.
And if Frank didn't help me, I probably would have gone on to regular college, and so he's the man.
In a dark multiverse,
That's right.
We don't get these amazing Goosebumps.
You get somebody.
No, we don't. Like Goosebumps doesn't even happen. Arnold doesn't get Martin Lawrence doesn't even exist in that world. Like,
it could be. If you start pulling pins out, it does fall apart.
Oh my God. Okay, so that speaks to really the skill set of your portfolio that you showed. What kind of work were you putting in at the time? Was it more illustration, painting? What were you doing?
Yeah, so when I went to art school, you could pick 2 paths. You could pick the advertising path or the illustration
Okay.
path. And I was 100% in on the illustration.
Of course.
And back then, at first my goals weren't as lofty. So I'm in school in the 70s and painting on vans and gas tanks on motorcycles. That's a big thing.
Oh yeah, it is.
And so we all learned how to do airbrush, and airbrush was to get that nice polished look on stuff. And I had a friend who owned a body shop, and so we were making some stuff happen, and I thought that was where I was going to go. And again, I was at art school, and one of my instructors did paperback book covers.
Wow.
And I saw his artwork was amazing, and I was just going, oh my God. I'm done with this. I want that.
We get the moving vans, man. I need books that sit still.
So
loves them.
I was an okay student.
Yeah.
There were better people in my school than I was, but I took a liking to this teacher, and I kept telling him I'm going to do paperback book covers. I'm going to do paperback book covers. And when we graduated, he pulled me aside. He said, "Okay, next week I'm going in to submit one of my paintings to an art director." He goes, I want you to come with me and bring your portfolio. He goes, you're not getting a job, but I want you to come and watch me interact with an art director, show how this whole thing works. And this guy will look at your portfolio, but you're not getting a job. This is just practice. So it was awesome. Now, this guy, Paul Stinson was his name, and he was all about Flash.
Okay.
And he had the Smokey and the Bandit T-top car. So we drove to the city with the T-tops off. And we went into this art director's office. And I had my portfolio, which I was proud of.
Mm-hmm.
And Paul first whips out his painting, which was off the charts, unbelievable. This guy is like, it was every day. Very nice, that's great, thanks for getting it done. And as you're sitting there, you're looking around. Now, everything was traditional back then, no digital art. So every art director who was worth a salt had paintings all lined up, standing up against the wall, all around the office. And they were 20 deep, 30 deep. And as you glance around the room, and it was one fantastic piece after another, and I was just like, oh my God, I am so not here yet. And the guy took my portfolio and he reviewed it, and he was very honest, and he was like, you've got potential here, but what you're showing me is a student's portfolio. You need to go home, and if you want to do this, every piece in your portfolio has to look like a book cover. All right, we got home, I was like, all right, and when I got home, I took all that stuff out and put it away in a drawer and said, okay, now we're starting over.
Oh man.
And it took a couple of years, and took 2 years. He said, all you need is 6.
Okay.
So, no, actually 8. So I had to do 8 more pieces. And again, while you're trying to work,
right,
you got to do it at night and all that stuff. Anyway, was able to get my portfolio together and start running it into the city. Now, you don't just go in and show your portfolio once and get your first book cover. You knock on a lot of, and again, in the old days, we used to go and everybody carried their art in a portfolio, and then you would go and meet everybody in person and you would show them your artwork. And very time consuming, very tedious. And there was drop-off days each day a week. So what we would do is we would get up on Monday morning and we would go to Random House, because that was their drop-off day, and I would drop off the portfolio. I live 40 miles from New York City. We would go in, drop off the portfolio, get back in the car, drive home, go to work. Next morning, wake up, go back and pick it up at Random House and take it to Vanderbugs.
Wow.
Get in the car, go home, go to work. And we did this for quite a long time. Eventually, I got my first cover, and that is the key to the whole thing. You need one, because no one's going to take a chance on you because you're nobody, and everybody can do one good piece of art in their portfolio, but you got to be able to do it on time, quick, all that stuff. So a man named Donald A. Waldheim, Dog Books, famous science fiction author and publisher, was the first guy. Actually, his wife was the receptionist, and she took a liking to us. And then I met Donald, and Donald was in his 80s.
Right.
And he was a gruff individual.
You don't get to the 80s at that point.
Exactly, and put up with a whole bunch of artists. And luckily I had grown up, with a lot of mean football coaches, so I was fine. I was used to it. I prefer people yelling at me. And he gave me my first cover.
That's amazing.
And it was very true. Once I had that piece, I could go down the street and say, hey, Mr. Waldheim gave me a job. And they go, all right, well, Don says you're good, then you're good. So yeah, that's what got us started.
That cosign is everything. Now, when it comes to like your own inspirations, who would be on your Mount Rushmore of people that you look up to art-wise?
So again, 1977 is when I'm a senior in high school, and album art is that is the king. And we all had turntables, and we all spent more on our stereo systems than we did on our first cars.
That's right.
And we used to sit there with the album covers in your lap while you listen to music, but album cover art was the gallery of the day. That's where you got to see the most new and prevalent and coolest stuff.
Right.
There was an artist named Roger Dean.
Okay.
Roger Dean was the cover artist for a band called Yes. And his art just blew me away, because at the time I'm still doing what I can see.
Right.
So everything I painted was very realistic, and you could get reference, or you could go outside and see it. And Roger Dean's stuff was long past that.
Right.
And it was that surrealistic thing where he's creating his own world, and it was that switch where I went, what am I doing? Yeah, I want to do that. I want people to see something they can't see every single day. And that was the real spark. So Roger Dean, he's still in there. And as I do stuff from time to time, I go, oh, there it is, a little bit of Roger right there slipping in.
Now that's a beautiful thing. That's one of those great sort of thank yous that you can say to
Yes.
them, you know, in your work, which is fantastic. Obviously, we're all Goosebumps fans here, so we got to hear the story of how did that job come about.
I had worked with Scholastic for a couple of years and had been doing I did a bunch of stuff for them. And they were always one-off, not series work. But we did this, there was a series, but it was different authors, but it was a genre. And it was called Women in Jeopardy. And in the Women in Jeopardy, it was the mom who had the kids, but she stumbles onto the murder mystery, and she's smarter than the police, and she figures out the crime. And this was an ongoing theme through all these books. And the cover art was always very similar, where it was a building, and you were always what we call worm's eye view. So it's down perspective, right? The perspective would go up. It was night. There'd be one light on, and then down in the base would be the lost shoe, the cigarette butt, the lost wallet, the empty purse. Again, just one single clue.
Right.
But I got real good at it, and I maybe did a half a dozen of them. So when Goosebumps came along, I wasn't working on anything. And if you all know that the very first Goosebumps was called Welcome to Dead House.
Yes.
Any of you who've been over the table, you've already heard me mention it. So Welcome to Dead House came out in July of 1992. We are in July of 2022.
Right.
So it is our 30th anniversary this month. So anyway, they were trying to figure, so Goosebumps came along and there was not a lot of hype for it. They thought they were venturing into new territory. There had never been horror books for ages 7 to 11. And the idea that it would be too scary was the most upfront thing that they had going. So I wasn't busy and they were going, all right, this Welcome to Dead House, this is going to work in that the Moms in Jeopardy thing. We want a low point of view. So when you see that cover, it has that same flair to it. And they go, we like your stuff. And then we're going to get this other guy named Jim Thiessen. And he's going to do book number 2, which is Stay Out of the Basement. And he was a more traditional horror artist. And then he said, when we see him side by side, then we'll make up our mind. And at the time, we were only talking 4 books. It wasn't like we were in this, battle for, for eternity.
30-book set, let's go.
So they did the 2, and what ended up happening was they took a look at it, and I always use those saturated colors, and they're going, this definitely takes the edge off. And Jim's stuff is awesome, but they're going, that's just a little too dark. So they said, all right, you get to do the next 2. And I was like, all right, let's do 2 more. And slowly but surely. And there was a time early on, I just wanted to bring this up, is around book 7, they were going, this is going nowhere. I think we're gonna pack this in. Let's give it into book 9, and then we're gonna shut this thing down. No social media, no internet, no anything, just you guys talking to one another. Going, oh, this is cool. Hey, this is pretty cool. Hey, this is pretty cool. And from book 7 to book 9 was if it was a bar graph, it would have just went like that. And once it took off, everybody, which was great, said, don't touch it.
Yeah.
This is working. Everybody just keep doing what they're doing. And it continued on and still continues on today. Up to date, over 380 million Goosebumps books have been made.
I'm responsible for like half of those. So Goosebumps comes out, and I know I saw it at the grocery store, right? Did you guys, where did you guys, what's some of the places that you guys found it?
Well, I got them at book.
You said Target? Book fairs?
Scholastic book orders.
Scholastic book orders? Where was the first place that you saw Goosebumps in the wild?
So, when you're a struggling artist, I would go to the Barnes & Noble,
Of course.
and I would look for my books. And then, if you remember, or it still happens, when you're at the bookstore, there would be a bunch of paperbacks and just spine showing. And then down, every 12 books, there would be one facing forward. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd go and look for my book, and I'd pull it out, and then I'd swap it with the one, so mine would be facing forward. So just to make me feel good and go home, all right, this is working. But the Goosebumps stuff, like you said, started showing up at the the different locations where I'm at the supermarket and you're right there at the checkout going, wow, I didn't even know they had paperbacks in the supermarket. And but the real thing was then at the time I have a kid, he's 24 now, so he wasn't there when Goosebumps was hopping. And but I had friends with kids and remember going over their house and the kids are all walking around with them. And just to have kids with books, I'm going, kids with books, we didn't
Crazy.
Yeah, exactly. What are you doing?
What sport is this? Book throwing?
And I was going, wow. And I was with the parents and I was going, yeah, those are mine. And they're going, get out of here. I was like, no. Here, look, you can see if you look really close, right there. So yeah, that was the tipping point where I went, oh my goodness. And then of course, then being contacted by the local school or the local library to come and speak. That was mind blowing, and it was the most horrific, fearful thing in my life. I'd spent my whole life by myself in my room, and now all of a sudden they're going. This is a good story. So I'm scared to death. I get books on how to present in public and all this stuff, and the way my program would work is I would talk for 3 minutes, but then we would go to a slideshow. And once you go to the slideshow and I'm pointing at something else, I'm cool. And again, back then, slides.
That's right.
Yeah, no PowerPoint, no anything, right? So you bring all the stuff, and I go to this school, and there's 600 kids. And they're all sitting on the floor. It's a little unnerving. I'm like, okay. And we start. I fumble through my first 3 minutes, but we get to the slides, and I'm starting to calm down. Around slide 3, the projector catches on fire. Whoa! And we put out the fire, and then they go, all right, we think we have another projector in the other room, but you go ahead and wing it. So now my whole presentation is gone. I got 600 kids, and I'm standing there, and then I go, all right. So made them all. They were all in rows, so I made them make a big circle. I got in the middle, and I had my portfolio, and I walked around, holding paintings and just riffing. And the sweat is pouring off of me, and I pretty much lost 20 pounds, and got home, got in the car, and I just sat there, and I went, it can't be any worse than that. So you survived, it's okay. And eventually it got fun, and now it's okay.
Oh, we're so glad that you got into that. Okay, so process-wise, to develop a cover from concept to finish, what is that process? What do you get? How do you vibe? What do you riff? What happens?
There was no digital art in 1992,
right.
And so everything was done traditionally. I was trained at a traditional school, so they had taught us a specific method for doing our stuff, which was perfect for the book business. R.L. Stine was writing the book at the same time I was doing the cover.
That's crazy.
So I didn't have a book to read. He would just give me a couple sentences, always the title, because he can't write the book without the title. And then he gave me a couple sentences, which is great. Having too much detail is kind of a hindrance or constraining, and you feel very obligated, because that's my job. It's not my job to come up with the ideas, it's my job to convey the ideas. And because he didn't give me much, that left me to do whatever I really wanted to do. So what we would do is I would do thumbnail sketches, which are just little tiny sketches on paper that were for me.
Right.
And at my school, I was taught to do, you just start riffing and just go through it, page after page after page. Don't think too much, just get it down. And then after a while, certain ideas will start to be consistent and start to float to the top. And at that point, I would pick 3 separate ideas, and I would take the time to draw them up on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. And then I would fax them. Does anybody know what a fax is? And I would fax them over to Scholastic, and they were horrible reproductions of my sketches, but it was enough for them to take a look at it in their meeting, and then they would decide, all right, we like number 2, let's go with number 2. The biggest input I ever got was, we like the background in number 3.
Wow.
Can you just use the character from number 2 and put it in there, and then go to final painting? So, okay, now I got a sketch and I know which one we're gonna do. I would take that sketch and put it on Xerox and I would blow it up. Because I'm gonna do, the final art was 20 inches by 20 inches. I had a 20 inch by 20 inch illustration board, and then I took that Xerox and put it over top. I would then take a little version of that sketch and paste it down on a board, 6 inches by 6 inches, and I would do what was called a color comp. And this is a super fast painting, and because I wanted to make all the Goosebumps a different set of colors, had to do all my experimenting there. And I could do them really fast, a couple hours I would have everything figured out. No detail, just a bunch of mush, just get it out there and see what works. What you're trying to avoid is going, all right, I'm just going to the final painting. I know what I'm doing. And spending a whole day painting this intricate background in blue, and then at the end of the day going, should be green. And spending the whole next day painting it green. So I would do the color comp, now I'm ready. And then I would start the painting. And I always started from background to foreground. So whatever the farthest in the distance is getting put down first. Now, when you look at the Goosebumps stuff, it has a polished look for it. Well, that's where that airbrush stuff that we learned how to do all the way back in the day came into play. So I would spray a whole background color on the board, and I would start taking my sketch and I would just trace with transfer paper, just the background stuff. Flip up that Xerox and then just have the background there. And then I would paint in the background, and then once I got that set, then I'd put the sketch back down and I'd transfer a little bit more. And then I'd flip that up and then I'd paint the thing that's the next closest. And then I would wait until the very end to paint the thing that's the closest thing to you. And what you try to do is in that background area, you keep your values in the middle. Because the idea is to have your brightest brights and your darkest darks in the foreground. Right. And that gives you incredible depth inside your painting. And I use that method every single time. And then the other thing that was a challenge was, okay, this has got to be done by a certain time. And I had to FedEx them to Scholastic. Wow. And I got to be really good friends with the people at FedEx because I would come running to the door, knocking on the door after they had locked it. And so they started to tell me, they're like, look, you know, the doors close at 9, but if you drive around back, the garage doors are still open, and if you can get in under the garage door, we'll take the painting from you. So I did a lot of power slides under the door to get those paintings in on time.
No, that's brilliant. The color theory piece that he just told you, that's like 4 years of art school that he just gave you in that quick little sentence. That's no joke. I also did commercial art, so I understand that the idea when it comes to commercial art is not necessarily being creative, but solving a problem.
Yes.
And what's fascinating is hearing you describe this process. It's like a physical version of Photoshop of what you just described. Where you're taking layers of stuff.
It's layers.
Yeah,
absolutely,
that's
layers.
Absolutely fascinating. What is the paint medium that you're using? Is it acrylic based? Is it oil? What are we looking at?
So I learned all of it. The art school I went to had tremendously talented people, and we did pen and ink, we did watercolor, we did oil, and we did acrylic. And I like to work with my hands on my art. I'm not very steady, and just the whole idea of I had a tipped desk, so my hands would always be on the art. Acrylic, when it's dry, is immovable. Yeah. You can't damage it. It's just there.
Right.
And I got into the whole idea of when I put it down, it's there. But what was great about it is also if you didn't like it, you could paint over it. Right. And any color will eventually cover any other color. Where if you're working in watercolor, you got 2 shots and the party's over. So it was great. And people thought it dried fast, but I actually painted with a hair dryer in one hand and a paintbrush in the other side. Paint, dry, paint, dry, paint, dry. And so the acrylic was very durable. And then if something went, okay, here's one of those things, because it was so durable, and once it was dry, it was permanent. If, say, and this happened, like I'm mixing my paints on the side, I'm not paying attention, I get paint on my arm, I put it on there, and now I just put this swash of paint on the board. I always had a container of perfectly clear water sitting next to me, and then you would just throw it at the painting. And quick, start working your hands on it, and you could get it off. If you were fast,
Wow.
that was coming off, but nothing else would happen to the painting. You made a mess everywhere. But yes, a number of times I went to that clear. That was
amazing.
That was a fire extinguisher.
Exactly. Yeah. Get to it. No, that's fantastic. What is your favorite of the Goosebumps covers?
It changes all the time.
That's fair.
Yeah,
Fair.
so, over at the desk today, one of the ones that's there is Egg Monsters from Mars. And again, one of my favorites, because when it was first described to me, I'm going, it's the story is it's a green egg, and I'm going, that's not scary. And, so I'm trying to find the scary in there, and finally when we got it all together, and it also has that warped perspective in the kitchen, and I use that warped perspective trick a lot.
Nice.
And it really adds to the dreamlike or trippy quality to the Goosebumps stuff, and so you start to look for it, and that warped perspective is in a lot of Goosebumps.
Oh my God, I love it. I love it. Let's get you guys asking some questions. Yes.
So closely related to that, was there ever a title or a piece that you just were like, no, I can't illustrate this for you, RL?
No, I've never had anything like artist block or writer's block or anything like that, because it's there. If somebody said, okay, make up something now with no perimeters, that would be a little harder for me, but he already laid it out. He gave me 3 sentences, and it's like, yeah, there it is. It's I often refer to it like cooking. It's like, here's your ingredients. Make me a souffle. And it's like, all right, I've never done that before. And I actually think my work is more like Mexican food, because it's always a monster. It's a lot of bright colors, and it's cheese, it's ground beef, and a little bit more cheese this time, a little less ground beef. All right, it's salsa. Okay, there you go. So
A little bit of spice. Was there ever a piece that the one that you sent over, or the ones that you sent over, Scholastic chose a cover that you're like, that's not the best one. I think this one's better.
That happens on a regular basis. That's okay, because what ends up happening, especially with the Goosebumps stuff, if something didn't make its way in, I like that idea.
Yeah.
When something else presented itself down the road, I went, something like this can be put in over here, and almost eventually every good thing got picked. And I just had that happen recently. There's a new series that R.L. Stine is working on right now that's a graphic novel, and it's geared towards you guys. It's for the grown-up Goosebumps kids. And it's a little darker, a little meaner, and I got a chance to do one of the variant covers for it. And I presented 3, and there was one in there where I said, that's the one. This is going to be great. And they came back, and that wasn't the one they picked. And I was like, all right, well, hopefully it'll ask me again, and that one's going in eventually.
That's awesome. Yes, young lady in the back.
What was your inspiration for Slappy?
My inspiration for Slappy? Right from the start, ventriloquist dummies are scary. Yeah, and there wasn't a whole lot of stretching that I needed to do to make them more scary, but the one thing I wanted to do was just concentrate on his eyes and make sure that his eyes were a little more bugging out of his head, and he had more of a furrowed brow. And that was it kind of happened on its own. I didn't have to push too hard.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
Yes, in the wig.
Did I ever meet R.L. Stine? Yes, I have. I've met him a lot of times. He's a super. So let me back this story up. So everybody thinks that R.L. would call me on the phone and go, okay, here's the new book, and it's about this, and then we discuss it for a while, and then I do the painting. That's not the way it works. We were doing Goosebumps covers for probably 2.5 years before we met each other.
Wow.
Super nice guy. We've become really good friends over the years. I've been to his house. All right, let me tell you. It's like his house.
Let's go.
So he lives on Park Avenue, where you would think he would.
That's right.
And you go there, and there's guys in the lobby, and they say, who are you coming here to see? And you say R.L. Stine, and they open the elevator, and then they reach in and they push the button, and you get pushed in, and the door closes. And then when the door opens up, you're in R.L.'s apartment.
Wow.
So, beautiful, very cool, super nice guy, and we've become closer friends now as we've grown older. We've gotten a lot more opportunities to do stuff together now that people are doing Zoom, and we're probably, it's not definitive, but I'm 95% sure we're going to be doing something together at the New York Comic Con in the fall.
Yes, we do.
So, it's basically, as someone who didn't read the books, your covers were usually on these VHS tapes as we were kids. Have you ever watched the live-action TV series or the Jack Black films?
Yes to both. At the beginning, I had nothing to do with the TV series, so I would just watch it just like you guys. I just went for sheer entertainment. And what I was always looking for was, are we going to leverage my art and I'm going to see something that looks like my stuff, or am I going to go there and it's going to be 180 degrees out and they're going to do their own thing? Now, it wasn't they didn't dislike my art. They had like $14.95 to make an episode. So, Egg Monsters from Mars wasn't happening because they didn't have the budget to create things, so they would spin the ones, but every once in a while it would be dead on, and that was cool too. I like going back and watching them now because, again, in '94 when they started, that's what it was.
Right.
Now, nowadays when you watch it, you start laughing because it was very campy, and again, the low budget makes it even cooler now. So I love watching, and the way people talk, like what were hip slogans, don't age so well.
That's
Say Ryan Gosling got his career out of it.
also true.
Ryan Gosling
Also true.
got started there.
Without question. Yes, dear.
Oh, so speaking of the movies, what did you think about the fact that some of your characters, like Slappy, was created in live action? Because obviously it's
Yeah.
CGI. But
So
Wait, Slappy's not real?
no, they're
Oh,
real.
I was gonna say, like, I still believe that dude is real.
So for a number of years, they had talked about a Goosebumps movie. In the 90s, Tim Burton had signed on for a while, and it just never materialized. They talked about it a number of times. So when this came up, that there was going to be a movie, and, at this stage of the game, I'm going, that ain't happening. And then, then I was talking with RL, and he's like, yeah, no, this thing's happening. And then he goes, yeah, but they chose Jack Black. I'm going, Jack Black? He's not like you. And he's like, I don't know, So my first thing was I was worried. Like Goosebumps still is looked back on fondly, and I'm going, I hope these guys don't wreck this by trying to make it too silly and funny. So the movie gets done, and I'm going, they didn't ask me to do anything. They didn't ask me to do the movie poster, and I was like, all right, I get it. I'm not a movie guy, but still would like to come out one more time and throw the heater.
That's right.
And the movie was destined to come out in October for Halloween. End of August, I get one of these weird emails that says, we need to talk to you. You have to sign 22 pieces of paper first before we'll even tell you who we are and what we're doing.
Jeez.
All right. And I'm not thinking Goosebumps. I'm going, it's too late for Goosebumps. We're done. And they're going, yeah. So at the end of the Goosebumps movie, Jack Black sees the Invisible Boy typing. And then he turns to the camera and he screams. And then he morphs onto a Goosebumps cover, and that's the end of the movie. And he goes, we've been trying to recreate that Goosebumps cover for like 8 weeks now, and it looks terrible. And somebody just said, why don't we call Tim? And we said, and we all went. So they gave me a call, and they're like, look, this has got to be done over the weekend. So I was able to paint that cover, so when you watch the movie, it's only on the screen for 2 seconds, but my artwork is in it.
That's right.
I really liked the movie. I was pleasantly surprised. Jack Black played it just right. It worked out it's its own thing. But again, to answer the real question, I never anticipated my characters to move or be 3D or any of that. They were never designed that way. And to see them come to life was as cool for you guys as it was for me.
That's awesome. Absolutely. Yes.
Is there any cover that you want to go back and redo it again?
All of them. No, I'm one of those guys. It's horrible. So when I first started working, I would finish a painting and then I would give it to, someone. And okay, I'm going to use my ex-wife as the example.
There we go.
Okay, here's your painting. Okay, let's hang it over the couch. Yeah, okay, cool. Hang it over the couch, and then she would leave and she would go to work, and I would take it down off there and go, I don't like this.
No.
And then I would work on it some more, and then I'd hang it back up, and then she'd come back and say, that's different than it was before. There's something new in the background. Yeah, I know. And then I'd walk past it again. I don't like this. I finally had to go out and buy a nice piece of glass and put it over top and seal the back of it so that I wouldn't keep taking it down and reworking it. So as I've gotten older, I've been able to let them all go. They are what they are. They got finished when they got finished. There's some that I like because of the situation. A Night in Terror Tower. So they always gave me plenty of time to do the covers. I needed about a week, but I always had a little bit more time. I was working on multiple pieces, but when it came time to do the Night in Terror Tower, all the time was gone. And I had to do it in one sitting and do it over a 30-hour stretch. And in the middle of the night, you're not on your game and you're doing the best you can and your eyes are burning and you're just trying to get it done. And I got it done and drove it to the city, which probably wasn't the most smart thing to do after not sleeping for 30 hours, but delivered it on time. So when I see it and I know what effort it took to get it done in a short period of time, I go, yeah, it's not bad. That still looks pretty good.
Right.
So I would have loved to have just a little more time on that one, and it wouldn't be anything on the main character, but it would be background stuff that I thought could be a little richer.
I think that's something for any artist in the room to know. A lot of times art is due, it's never actually done. And that's something you have to get used to, that if you're just like, oh, I want it to be perfect, it will never get that.
No, and that's the key, is don't get hung up on that, because as an illustrator, getting it done on time is actually more important than what you are delivering. But they both go hand in hand, but you back into that knowing it doesn't matter. It will get done, and that's what keeps you in the game, and that's why they keep calling you, is your work's consistent and it gets done on
That's
time.
right. That's real. Love it. Any other questions? Yes.
You mentioned that you were doing illustrations as well, but was there ever a case where you turned in early and your illustration influenced something in the style?
Oh, that's a good question. So because you guys are working simultaneously,
Yes.
was there ever a time where you finished a cover before the book was done and it influenced something?
So the famous story is this one, and I didn't know this until a couple years ago. So I was always done before the book was done.
Wow.
Always. And so say cheese and die. Family of skeletons. Hanging around, barbecuing in the backyard. And that was the first Goosebumps cover where I went, oh, this is funny too. We're supposed to fool around a little bit here. So get done, and they ship it over, and they always let R.L. Stine see it, while he was still running, and he was like, wow, this is cool, but there's no family of skeletons barbecuing in this story. And they said, well, Tim's not repainting it, so you figure out where that's going to go. And he goes, so he said he was stumped for a while, and then he said, I had to fall back on the dream sequence where that's where the skeletons show up in a dream. And I never heard that story until like 5 years ago. So and for the most part, we were spot on. And it shouldn't have happened as often as it did. There was magic in the sauce.
Of course.
And I only had to change one Goosebumps cover out of all the 100 plus that I did. It was Revenge of the Lawn Gnomes. And Revenge of the Lawn Gnomes has two gnomes on it. There's one in the front that has his arms folded. And there's another guy behind him who looks a little ignorant, and he's scratching the side of his head. And in the original, he had his finger jammed up his nose. He was picking his nose. And when I turned it in, everybody's like, ah, that's hilarious. We're keeping it. That's awesome. Let's go. Go on to the next one. And then somebody at the top said, look, we're shipping these into schools. We're not going to encourage kids to pick their nose. You got to pull his finger out of his nose. So that's all I had to do. I had to take it out of his nose and put it to the side of his head.
But the gnomes weren't the good ones.
No.
So like, the kid looks at that book and goes, I want to be him.
So what can I say? That was the extent of the changes. Which cannot complain.
That is so true.
It was better with his finger.
Any other questions? I'm going to keep riffing. So these original pieces, are they out in the market? Do you still have most of them? Where do they go?
Okay, so because when we were doing them, there wasn't a digital world.
Right.
You needed the physical art to keep taking reproductions to be making the glow-in-the-dark underwear or whatever we were making next at the time. So Scholastic paid extra to keep the art. And so, again, I haven't seen them, I haven't touched them since the day I finished them. And then Goosebumps was over and they were stored away in a closet or a warehouse. 8 years ago, there was a big storm on the East Coast. I live in New Jersey, obviously right outside of Manhattan. And Hurricane Sandy came rolling through and it flooded the lower half of Manhattan. And that's where Scholastic Books was, and that's where all the warehouses were. And for the longest time, the story went around was, they're gone. They were destroyed in the flood and that's it. And people were asking me about it and I'm going, that's entirely possible. I said, I don't have access, and again, this is all these years later, so anybody that I knew at Scholastic, they were gone.
Right.
So you guys as fans started to do your, due diligence and asking all the right people, and they started to say, no, they exist, they're not gone, they exist, but nobody showed us. They just kept saying, no, they exist. They moved the Scholastic headquarters from that area that got flooded uptown to a brand new, facility I've seen pictures, it's beautiful. And they hung some of the classic book art in the lobby, and there are Goosebumps paintings hanging in the lobby of Scholastic. So they exist, some of them at least, and I would love to see them again.
Yeah.
So actually, I reached out to them and asked them if I could take them out and tour with them.
Yeah. That should be like a no-brainer.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'll bring them back. I promise, I'll bring them back.
Or I'll pitch another one. Like either way.
Yeah, either way. Or I'll kidnap them and I'll be on the run. Tim and his paintings. So yeah, we're still working on it. We'll see what happens in the future.
Man, that's incredible. Now, I have to admit, it's got to be a matter of extreme pride to have a book series that now you have a book that features just your covers. That's got to be something that's precious, because as much as we love the stories, to showcase that the covers meant that much to us as well has got to be an accomplishment as a creator.
Yeah, so the making of the art of Goosebumps was a bumpy road. And now, when I say this, I don't want you to think that I'm complaining in any way, shape, or form. The idea of having a book with your art it's mind-blowing.
Of course.
So, when I first was approached, okay, if I wanted to put out a book about the art of Goosebumps, I could have done it. I would have to reach out to Scholastic and say, I would like to put out the book, I will pay you X, and then I'm going to present this book. And I'm not because I'm the guy who made it, I'm not that into it.
Fair.
I would rather do a book about your art than
no.
to do a book about mine. But that's just, you know what it is.
Of course.
I would groan writing, and then I did this. This other company reached out and they bought the rights. So they don't have to pay me anything to do the art of Goosebumps. They paid Scholastic.
Wow.
So then they were having a hard time finding good reproductions.
Of course.
So they reached out to me and they're going, we don't have any money, we spent it all to make the book. Yeah, and at that point I can go, I'll be a jerk and go, no, you can't have them. So I was like, yeah, okay, here you go. Here's all the reproductions. These are good. And then they kept dragging their feet, and then a couple other things happened, and then because they weren't focusing. They were trying to do the whole history of Goosebumps, and the thing was just getting out of whack. And they were down to, I think, the last 3 months. Like, you are only allowed to hold the license for, a certain number of years, and then if you don't do anything, you got to give it back. They called this guy named Mark McNabb. They did not know that Mark McNabb was a close personal friend for 30 years. I was there when his daughter was born. He was there when my son was born. And he called me up and was like, time might reach out. They want me to do the book. Right. Because he's an excellent designer. And I'm over it. Right. And I'm going, this guy, blah, 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 blah. And then I was like, and he was all, phone went quiet. And I was like, oh, you want to do it? I was like, yeah, I want to do it. I was like, all right, bud, here's how it's going to go. We're going in the attic. We're going to dig out everything. I said, you have tons of scanning to do. I'll give you, and I save everything. Of course. So went through all the folders. He scanned all the sketches. He took care of everything. So it was his labor of love that made that book happen. And when he designed everything, and then he presented the whole thing to me, and he said, I want you to tweak this and make it your own. And I just pushed it all back. And I said, this is your book. So everything you see had nothing to do with me. It's all Mark's work, and it came out really, really great.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Wait for him to celebrate you, as well as for you to celebrate him by allowing him to add his voice to it. That just makes you even cooler. Like, why are you like the greatest dude ever? And I'm like so mad that I'm just not meeting you.
Well, I did say I have an ex-wife, so she might have something to say. That might be contradictory to that.
Opinions.
Actually, I think that I've laughed about this before. I'm very good friends with my ex-wife, and she would say nice things about me. Nice enough, anyway. But I always said, if you ever want to do a job interview and you want to know what somebody's like, find one of their ex-partners and have them tell them, what's up with this guy.
So, does he put the lid down? Yes. That's why I want to force that. Any other last questions before we go? Yes.
Yeah. So, do you still sell any of the artwork? I know this was like Rightstuf, like with the technology. Do you use anything?
Yes. So I sell. I think I have a dozen of the Goosebumps prints for sale through my website. What we also do. This started during the pandemic, and started to see the long lines of people who were hungry. And so what we do is we sell the posters, and posters run, I think they're $21 for the 9x9 and $27 for the 18x18, and $10 from every sale goes to purchasing food and donating to the local food bank. So, and it's me and my son do it. Like, we go get the food, we load it in the truck, we drive it down the street. So 100% of that $10 is purchasing food. So you get a Goosebumps cover, and we get to do something that's pretty good.
The impact that you've had on our lives over the last 30 years. Wow, how did we get that old? What happened? But sir, it's an absolute honor. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You guys have a great show. Continue enjoying yourselves.
Thank you.
And one more time.